Wonderful. Hello, everybody. Today is a wonderful day of two fabulous female angel investors. Christine, thank you for being on. And today, Christine is actually a co-author of Impact with Wings. This is the book. I'm so excited to have it. Yay! You can see that. Wonderful. A little bit off by that, but it's just been wonderful. We had the SoCal book launch last week with Suzanne Andrews, another angel investor from WingPack. So we're really excited to kind of support you guys and continue your great work from this book. So today we're going to be talking about emerging markets and how angel investors are investing in it. What does all that sound like? How do they invest? What's the risk tolerance? What are the profiles? What are the economies of scale or economies of that country? So Christine, thank you so much for being on. I'll give it to you so you can kind of introduce yourself, where you're from. I just love that we're two international people. I'm from Venezuela, and you can introduce yourself. So welcome to the Google Hangout, Christine.
Fantastic having me here. Greetings from San Francisco. So as Sylvia mentioned, I'm actually from the Philippines, and as well as my co-authors on Impact with Wings, Windrop in Hong Kong, Jagrudi from India. We have Hannah Yang, who's also from Argentina. And when I was part of writing this book, I really wanted to investigate on what's really the current trends and going on in the emerging market. Of course, no venture and angel investment is still a nascent terminologies in emerging economies, and I was able to interview both entrepreneurs and investors in different emerging markets, such as Venezuela is one, Argentina, the Philippines, and Egypt, just to see what they've been seeing on the ground itself and what do they think are the different risks as well as opportunities in their markets.
Wonderful. I love it. Christine, you wrote one of the chapters here, and I was kind of reviewing. I have all my little dog tags here, and I love that you took that upon yourself to interview these entrepreneurs in different countries. And so one of the things that is brought up in the chapter is diaspora investing. So I don't even know the full definition. So go ahead. I'm really intrigued to know even more. I always learn something every day, so it's kind of neat to hear it from you.
Diaspora investing came about in early 2014, specifically in February, when the Rockefeller Foundation as well as the Aspen Institute created this program called Diaspora Program, or RAD, wherein they really wanted to accelerate or channel investments from diaspora communities here in the United States back to their home countries. And for their pilot phase, they identified diaspora communities in the US, specifically for India, Kenya, the Philippines, and seeing what would be different opportunities for those communities to give back to their home countries. And that's also a good way, especially for social impact investing, because we see different profiles of businesses in emerging markets that are really trying to solve social concerns within the communities that they are in, specifically in the lack of education, food, sustainability, healthcare, and overall the well-being of the people there.
Mm. And that well-being is has a really broad definition. We talked a little bit before we started. Is that what does that well-being look like? Because we sometimes when we're I know people go on, like, let's say a mission trip that just came back from one, or they want to invest in a community. How is that taken? Small, big, looking at the whole country. What do people look at?
Right. I mean, in terms of well-being, I mean there are so many social concerns that you could really think about when you're in a developing country or you're going to travel into developing economies. And probably traffic is one, or even things as pollution. And you can definitely see a lot of homelessness and children who do not have the capacity to eat 3 times a day. And it really depends on how you define well-being, as you mentioned, but there are so many aspects and just businesses out there that are trying to provide solutions for these different types of concerns, especially in the developing market.
Yeah, and those solutions are the things that are really exciting. The solution here is going to be very different from there. So one of the things I know that, teaching engineering in my past, it's like, you can't define or create something of a solution here and think it's going to kind of translate overseas. So I think that that's one of the positives of being an angel investor and investing in emerging markets, is that you're investing in the people who are there in that country, solving that country's needs on the ground. So any comments about that? I just love that kind of intersection there.
Yeah, definitely there is an intersection. And you can also take some of the business models that we've seen have worked in the US, on-demand transportation, for instance. But if you're looking into Southeast Asia, capitals of those cities, you can probably have on-demand bikes, for instance, because the traffic there is just so bad that you'd rather take a bike or a bicycle, or sorry, a motorbike, rather than take a car. So there are those specific companies that instead of on-demand cars, it's on-demand motorbikes. Ways of providing electricity to some of the things that we probably do not need here. Providing solar powered lamps to those people, villages and mountains, which are really far out from different urban cities, and they definitely need that kind of basic service.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and that goes back into, we talked about diaspora. I'm going to say it wrong every single time, and then social impact investing, and the social impact investing in those emerging markets. It's kind of dive into that, because I feel like part of it is a social impact investing in something that you just mentioned. But what about those really neat ideas that could actually get a really high rate of return? And do you have any examples about those?
Well, in terms of high rate of return for emerging economies, we've seen that it's really successful once you're going into a market, say, for example, in Jakarta, wherein their population is booming. So e-commerce there is actually booming very, very well. Some of the economies in Africa, for instance, are into peer-to-peer payments, and that's because most of them do not carry smartphones. So there's been a couple of startups that came out with peer-to-peer payments using your traditional mobile sets and handphone sets. And those would be the type wherein you can really scale in terms of who are these people using these type of services, would be those in the middle class. And into what's your total addressable market, what is your product that solves a lot of problems for a lot of people. So it's more on the volume and the population of people that your product or service that targets the community itself.
Yeah, I like that. I was just talking to somebody just the other day about the cell phones in Africa, and one of the things that I think also with the emerging market kind of investing is you're helping a person or a group of people make an impact in their community, and therefore the community becomes stronger. And I think that that's one of the reasons why you do the emerging market investing, is because there is such a big impact on that community. Like, you can just think about that cell phone. Well, if you give it to a woman who can do that peer-to-peer lending or peer-to-peer whatever that is, whatever that example is of that community, she becomes a leader in her community, and then that kind of creates that impact.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of those startups that are trying to help certain communities. Another one would be on-demand doctors. So having access to healthcare or even the hospital might be a little bit far for some of the communities who live in far out villages, and they still need that basic type of service. So things like that definitely are part of social impact investing. Again, it's in terms of the return on investment there, looking at how big is really that market and how many people would be really using your service.
Yeah, and also there's a huge impact too. Let's say like the ones that you just said, the on-demand doctors. Then the digital age is upon us, obviously. But connecting them to a doctor in the United States that can solve a bigger problem than, let's say, a doctor that's in that community that can't do so much. Have you seen any of that, of those examples?
Not necessarily. I think it's more on looking into really the risks and challenges first, and then really modifying your product so that you kind of mitigating that risk over time.
Mm-hmm. But being part of that change too, of that doctor creating more of their own impact in their small community, probably.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that you mentioned in the book is some examples. Of course, I want to hear more about the example of Venezuela. So can you think back to that one? I'm going to try to see if I can look it up pretty quickly. Yeah, Alejandro Quintero, CEO and co-founder of Cuestiona.me, so me, Cuestiona Me, a Venezuelan-based question and answer online platform. So any other information about that?
Yeah, so I actually met Alejandro when he came over here to the US, and he took part of Manos Accelerator program.
Oh, okay.
So what Manos does, I think you're familiar with it too, is that they take in applications from Latino entrepreneurs, both as well as in Latin America, and they incubate those startup entrepreneurs and their businesses. So that's how I got to meet Alejandro. I was actually a mentor of that program, a few cohorts previously. And what I learned, especially in Venezuela and some of the South American countries as well, it's really hard to find funding. And looking at his particular situation then, but he was really able to apply to Manos and kind of incubate his business here, because he already got some traction in Venezuela, and I believe it's in Colombia as well. And he wanted to take that business here into the Spanish market, actually in the Bay Area first. Yeah, I thought that was a good move for his part, so that he can also scale the business, know the U.S. landscape, and get introduced to U.S. investors here, and just have that knowledge of hey, what do Silicon Valley investors really look for?
Well, that's really neat. And what is it says Cuestioname. Do you know what the platform is? A question and answer online platform.
Yeah. So they use Twitter in terms of reaching out to, if they're, what he told me was, they had a presidential election. And so if you want to reach out to those presidential candidates, you can submit your questions to the candidates themselves, and they would qualify which questions that those candidates would answer. So it's first was, of course, on the political side, but they do see that as a platform that they can use to reach out to celebrities, for instance, or any type of sports and journalists who would like to have from the point of view from the people too, of what are really the people thinking about, and reach out to these high profile, whether they're celebrities and any type of individuals who have a lot of say and a lot of followers.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Staying with that governmental, I mean, he was solving a problem to talk to the government, but I also know that in the chapter you kind of mentioned about how government can actually help startups, and we've also seen here in the United States, more accelerators are on the rise because, let's say somebody like the SBA who funds our accelerator, Hair Labs, has done more and more of funding accelerators so that they can impact the entrepreneurs in their communities. So you mentioned here that in the Philippines, actually, there is a startup business bill. So any more kind of comments about that? Because that's really important when you have that government transparency. That really helps those startups, right?
Yeah, that bill itself is really more for taxation of your first 3 years, I believe, when you're incorporating your business in the Philippines. Again, right now, most of the developing economies, their regulations are not very structured yet. So a lot of these startups do prefer to incorporate in neighboring countries, in Southeast Asia. For example, it would be in Singapore, or you can also have the option to incorporate in Delaware. And that's just because the regulations there are much more structured. There's much more transparency in terms of the legalities of how you can run your businesses, taxation, and whatnot. Another part of that too is for other government-led initiatives, and the government of Buenos Aires. So they've also had the Young Entrepreneurship Program. They lead different forms so that entrepreneurs can get education in terms of how do you create business plans, contact investors, fundraising. And there's also what they call as a Godmothers Initiative, where young entrepreneurs are paired with bigger corporations so that they know how to scale the business, and they get that knowledge sharing between entrepreneurs and the corporations over there. So, I mean, there are some government initiatives like that, but of course the situation right now, because for startup investing, that's probably in the lower end of what emerging economies should really focus about. And there are a lot of other I would say major challenges that are just impeding on just having more structure, and even private companies leading the education, or giving out much more classes to both local entrepreneurs and local investors.
Yeah, you mentioned here that Silvia Carbonell points to the government's investment in 4 accelerators that provide seed capital as evidence of public sector support. So I really like that. I know that I went down to a Latin American startup conference that was put on by a capital firm in Canada. So that was really cool. We went down to Buenos Aires, we went down to Chile and to Peru, and the startup Buenos Aires was really getting up and going. And there's a lot of the startup type of volunteer types of organizations. And if they do have government support, that's always nice to have.
Definitely, it's nice to have. Startup Chile is one that has been attracting a lot of foreign entrepreneurs actually to go into Chile and work there. So it's pretty interesting how creative a lot of these government-led initiatives have been, and definitely something that a lot of government still needs to scale up more.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking up startupchile.org online. I know that there's a lot of startup different organizations all over the world. So that's always nice if they do have that kind of accelerator type of opportunities, or just events to connect the local angel investors to the entrepreneurs. That's really great. So maybe, I don't know, if I was investing overseas and I was investing as an angel investor in emerging economies, I would be seeing, okay, is there a startup XYZ in that country? Because that actually de-risks me a little bit. So it's like we just talked about government, and then now it's like, okay, well, what is the ecosystem of that city or that country that will help that angel investor be less risk averse to invest in that startup?
There are also different, regional or country-specific angel groups that are trying to, one, educate the local investors on, how do you, value a business, or what would be an appropriate vehicle for investors, whether it's convertible note or equity. And that's also because what we've seen is that for those investors who are local or who have not worked overseas or was not really educated overseas, they tend to work in traditional businesses, not really your tech startups. And the knowledge sharing, of course, is really understanding what's going to be on your term sheet, for instance, or how do you value a company in a specific country. And other part of that too is how do you employ more people in the startup economies. An example for that actually is when someone reached out to me who was looking for an executive to run their Manila office, and they're a VC-backed startup here in the Valley. And what I gathered is that they had a lot of really good profile, but there was one even executive from the Philippines who came from a big corporation, but he was asking for more equity than the co-founder had. And that's just a big lack of, there's just a gap, right, of how people understand the startup economy, and what does an equity mean, what's the average equity for investors, and as well as those who are going into startup organizations. And there's definitely that lack of education.
Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned in the chapter fully, but I know that you kind of mentioned a little bit, is that we need to educate both sides of the venture table, the entrepreneur and the angel. Like you just said, there's lots of angel groups there, and we just talked about startup in XYZ accelerator. How do we bridge that in an emerging economy? Can we as angel investors, or let's say entrepreneurial advocates, how do we mentor them? Can we mentor them? Is that working? Well, I don't know.
I mean, as you said, though, there are different conferences that are just in different cities in emerging economies, and they sometimes bring on speakers in those type of conferences who have experience in investing, whether it's in developing or a developed country. So attending those type of conferences to meet seasoned investors as well as seasoned entrepreneurs is really, I think it's really vital. And having also the experience of interacting with local investors as well as local entrepreneurs to really understand what's really lacking in the ecosystem. And conferences, 500 Startups is very active in the international scene pretty much, but they have Geeks on a Plane for Africa, Middle East, and here in too. And then there's also another outfit called Geeks on a Beach, which is actually from the Philippines. And
talk to me about that.
They have
Geeks on a Beach, Geeks on a Plane. Both of those.
Yeah, but no, what they do is that they really curate those speakers within those type of conferences, wherein you can definitely meet and greet investors coming in from different parts of the world who are seasoned investors, really understand the investing market. And then, of course, there would be an attendee list, entrepreneurs in the locality where they're in. And there's just an exchange of knowledge from that. I think that's really important too.
No, that's great. I mean, I'm obviously an advocate for conferences, because we're just putting on the Hair Venture Summit in a couple of weeks. So of course I'm all about it. Of course, I'm getting everybody together, and I think that's good to know that that's going on, in these emerging economies, because you just don't know if they're being supported or not, and that's just hard to tell. But if there are things going on in those economies, that's good,
Yeah, another way that I've seen to are pulling in investors overseas to go on a trip to specific countries, and I've seen that with Africa, specifically in Nigeria. I believe Susanna actually went to one of those investment trips to Nigeria, and then now I also saw one investment trip that was specifically for Cambodia and Vietnam. And so getting that exposure as an investor and being on the ground, as I said, really talking to the entrepreneurs and understanding what's lacking, what's the gap that you can fill as an investor, and also understand really where the market is going in that specific country. Is really important.
Yeah, I mean that's in anything. You need to know who's on the ground, and seeing the actually entrepreneurs, but then also the people who can help them in that area as well. And then you become that mentor overseas and stuff like that. So it's a family of startup advocates helping out that entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And then one of the things that we also talked about is that when you go, let's say these trips, or if you are going to be investing in that emerging market, they're solving different kinds of problems. So they're not solving the things that, let's say, the high-tech, biotech, high ROI here in the United States, but it's equally as important overseas. And how can an entrepreneur, an angel investor, well, that's like a loaded question, but what are those types of social impact ventures that are available to angel investors overseas, first of all?
Yeah, I think for angel investors, I mean, you could go both ways. It's either you join a fund that's really specific to social impact investing. An example of that is a company called Tonic here, also based here in the Bay Area, or even joining like an immediate network, for instance. And the type of companies that you will see definitely would be in terms of education, and one would be sustainability. It might be my example was the solar powered lamps. That's another example, or even as simple as an e-commerce shop that's getting their supplies from different indigenous tribes. That's also part of social impact, right? And I would say it's really a mixed bag, but it depends on the investment thesis of the fund that you're joining, and for you too as an angel investor, of what are you passionate about, whether it's education focused or more on the consumer focus industries. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are several channels that you can tap into.
Yeah, I mean, I even have it right here. I'm gonna take it from the back here. This is something I picked up in Peru, and I had to get it. Yeah, it's this wonderful weaving, and I loved it because it was let's say a community of ladies who you could see there that were doing these wonderful weavings, and then one section was them doing, another section was like 2 or 3 mothers taking care of all the kids. And what I really loved, and I think I still have it because I loved it so much, is that they had all of the tags like this. I don't know if it says it here, has the name of the weaver on there. This is Ticas. I love that. It was, you don't see this all the time. So something like this that is a community of women who are, still in their communities. It's like way out in the boonies, this one that we went to, but they didn't have to come into the city and change their whole lifestyle. So I would much rather invest in something like that that's exactly sustainable, that you're sustaining these communities, they're weaving, they're taking care of their kids, and then they actually get the money back. I mean, they had this like little sheet of paper that they were putting down exactly what I paid for the weaving, and it went to her, and a part of it goes to the community back. That's the types of things that I think in this emerging economies and social impact, because I know that's what WingPact is all about, and more, of course. But how do you put those things together, and how do people find out about? I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know where I went to get this. But I would love to. I mean, obviously I do, because it has a little tag. I should contact them. That's what it is. See if we can invest in that community.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I mean, it's about finding the right type of organization that fits your investment thesis, right? So for you, if you're looking into these type of consumer-based products that are whether they're produced by a certain indigenous tribe, or certain weavers, or women who actually produce the products, there are different funds out there, and they're still actually, I would say, they're difficult, especially if you're not in that ecosystem wherein someone who has done it before, or who knows someone. And there's still that need, right? Especially here in the Valley, of knowing, like, all right, where do I go if I want to invest in these type of businesses in emerging economies. For me, how I went about it is actually I got in contact with Tonic, and I spoke to their CEO and kind of understood what their model is and what type of businesses. I went on one of their webinars with one of the startups who was fundraising then, and it was also from an emerging market. And I was really proactive in doing that, because I did want to channel my investment in emerging economies. Again, so part of being an angel investor is, if you really want to do something, and part of it is being proactive, because right now there's no easy way to say, yes, I'm really passionate about emerging markets. I want to I want to invest on a specific fund that will invest on emerging markets. But you kind of have to know who's doing that and who's raising money for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's even just a theme. My volume went really strange. But I think that's even a theme in angel investing, is that you want to connect with that entrepreneur, and there is a real reason why you are investing. So I think that, bringing this up is like so important, because like it's either emerging markets or in the United States, you have to know what you like, what the industry is that you want to invest in, and then make that investment really count for that, say entrepreneur. And I love that you said proactiveness, is that we've talked a lot on all these Google Hangouts, is that, okay, as an angel investor, some people don't have enough deal flow, then we'll be proactive, go to events, go and meet with other angel groups, join an angel group. Or I know Valentina was on the call from Seattle, and she goes, you know what, I have people come over to my house, and we have coffee together. So, I mean, that's a great theme that goes amongst all angel investors. Don't you think?
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that when I do talk to entrepreneurs of raising money, they sometimes don't really realize what it is on the angel side, is that we do have to be proactive, because we do like certain things. And the entrepreneur always thinks, oh my gosh, where am I going to find somebody? But it's like really trying to figure out who is that connector, how do you connect with that angel investor is above all the most important thing. And how do you get in front of that angel investor is going to events and going to conferences and meeting people and talking to people about what you're excited about. Talk about your startup. Talk about what interests you, because you don't never know if you're going to have this angel investor that loves what you're doing.
I actually speak about that as well on some parts of the chapter on emerging markets, because for a local entrepreneur to reach out to an investor, who hasn't really been in that country, but they just send a cold email, for instance, it's really kind of oddball for that. And what we've seen so far is that in emerging markets, there are also certain niche of people who kind of gather together, and they know the investors, they know some of the entrepreneurs, and so these are the type of entrepreneurs who are getting that exposure to the investment side. Whereas if you're a local entrepreneur from province and you don't really have any connections into the investment side of things, it's really, really difficult. And that is why I mentioned that, hey, there are conferences, but again, as an entrepreneur, you really have to be proactive as well. And there are a lot of ways that you can go about it, whether it's attending a specific meetup in the city that, or in the region that you're in, or even as simple as reaching out through a cold email to not necessarily living in your country, but that they have a specific focus in the region that you're in, or even the product that you have.
Yeah, and there's another connection piece here too, is that you mentioned earlier when we were talking in private, is that there's what about the expat community? There's expats in Silicon Valley that want to give back to the country that they're coming from. Do you see that a lot? How does that manifest itself?
And this is the market. A lot of the expats see that they're in, and they start their startup. They know where they can get investments, and so that challenge of meeting investors, it's not as difficult as someone who's really bubble, as I would say. And then the other part too are who have Silicon Valley experience, who go back to the home countries that they're in, and they already understand what it takes. Either they've been a successful entrepreneur here in the Valley, they've exited a startup, some startups, or they've worked in any type of startup capacity, so they understand it. And that also is, if you look into the profiles of who are these venture capitalists who have funds in emerging markets and are actually on the ground, trying to get pipeline, and you would look into their profiles and they're like, oh yeah, they've worked in the Valley before, or the case that is active in the startup ecosystem. So it's a two-sided marketplace. I see like these expats who are moving to emerging markets and actually creating the startups there, and there are also investors who have that Silicon Valley experience and they move back to their home countries. And that's what I call brain gain phenomenon. And we've seen that in India, for instance, wherein they send out a lot of their citizens here to get their master's degree, become really, really successful, right? The brain drain phenomenon. But then, once they have that capacity to invest back, or even to go back to their home country in India, and that's why we've seen so many actually investors. If you look at their profile in India, is that they've had Silicon Valley experience, and they understand how the whole ecosystem works. So part of that too is, if you're very, very passionate about going back to your home country, and that's part of that brain gain phenomenon, and being part of that journey of saying that, hey, yes, I really want to go back to my home country and improve the lives of the people over there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you have some kind of connection anyways as an expat. So you kind of already understand the community and understand the country. You might not understand how the startup world goes, or let's say a need of now the country, but you want to give back.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Like, for instance, like, when I learned that you wrote about a Venezuelan guy in your chapter, I was like, tell me about him. I want to know more about him. And, when the conference that asked me to come talk to them, LatAm startups. And when they asked me to come and speak, I'm like, 100%, I want to help Latin American startups. So really, as angel investors, we need to do that due diligence of finding things like that that connect us to that entrepreneur. And actually, that entrepreneur will be more successful because you're more vested in that success, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Part of that too is is if you've had some exposure to that country, to that city, you already know some people who can really help you out in terms of due diligence. Whether the one thing that I'm always careful about is what's the profile of this person, and I would always call my friend or my lawyer friend back home to kind of investigate their background, right? So you have people who you can trust that's already on the ground because you've either lived there or have traveled there, and it's mitigating that risk of, hey, I don't know anything about this country, compared to I know a little bit about this country. I've lived here, and I know how companies would know the risk of investing in certain individuals, and that's a part of mitigating that type of risk.
Yeah, and I also think that also is that person that's on the ground might have more of a traditional way of thinking about business, like small business, the country, the community, maybe it's even smaller, a community, or let's say the region. But you as an investor coming in from the United States can give that other like scale aspect of that business. I don't know if you have any examples, but I see that all the time, even in the United States, is that let's say somebody who's been doing small business does their third, fourth, fifth business, and then you get an advisor or somebody who's been, let's say, in high tech or high growth companies comes in and like, well, what about thinking about it this way? So that combination of on the ground small business thinking and somebody coming from overseas, an investor that wants that high growth rate of return, not necessarily just tech, but they can bring in that expertise, and that creates that really amazing synergy. I don't know if you have any examples or you've seen that. I don't know, but I just think that that's really a great little tie-in.
Statistics that says there are more women entrepreneurs in developing economies, but they're not focused in the tech industry. They're more focused on those small type of businesses, as you mentioned, or even the traditional businesses in retail, restaurants, and whatnot. And over time as well, we really want to encourage these women to kind of step up and understand that, hey, there's a larger market that's out there that you could also scale your business. For example, if you have like a retail shop, you could go all out on e-commerce and not only reach the local market that you're in, but as well as overseas. So that type of thinking is something that an investor can really add on to the entrepreneur and understand to what it takes to actually get exposure to the international market. Because I think the part of it too is some people think that the addressable market, if you're in the US, your addressable market is already huge. Like you have an advantage because you're already here in the US. Whereas, say for example, if you're in Africa or even parts of Southeast Asia, wherein the population is smaller and you're that specific population, most of the investors say like, oh, this business, it's not going to scale compared to model in the United States. And so you really need to have that thinking of, all right, what is the model for me so that I can take my business not just in the small city or small country that I'm from, and adapt that to different international markets. So you kind of have to have that strategy in place even so that the investor will not just tell you like, hey, your addressable market is too small because you're just in a certain country, or you're kind of thinking along, right, I just want to be in this certain country.
Yeah, I know one of the examples that we use in San Diego a lot, because it is a San Diego startup and has done really, really good, is Pura Vida bracelets, Pura Vida. And their story is that they were in Costa Rica, two guys on a surf trip, I think it's a surf trip, and they saw these women and men selling bracelets on the street, and they're like, well, why not bring them to San Diego and we give you back the the proceeds that we have from selling these bracelets. I know it's a longer story than that. I've heard it sometimes, but that's interesting, saying having that love of Costa Rica to help out, to really have that impact on every single artisan in that's making these bracelets. It's just interesting. That's just one example. There are probably many other examples, like you said, that you can, as an investor from overseas, from the United States, you can bring in that like expansion of that market base.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it go both ways, right? An example would be if you're headquartered in a small country in Europe and you do have a really, really good product with you, most of them actually come to the Bay Area and expand from here, there, then on. But again, for some entrepreneurs, that's not an opportunity that they can capitalize on, whether or not, because of financing or whatnot. So it's really difficult. But I've known some of the, some organizations that take those local entrepreneurs and go into what they call as a Silicon Valley trek, so that they get that exposure of how startups here actually scale and back to their home country, so they know, like, hey, once you have a really good product and that you can actually scale it in the international market, and that's also how you expand your investment story, right? When you're pitching to investors of, we're going to start off first in the country that we know very, very well, but we have plans to expand in the international market, and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, no, I love it. And like you mentioned that there are a higher percentage of women entrepreneurs going to small business overseas. You said that, but not in high tech. But there are some examples, like you said, the solar bulb and all of that have transcended from a woman because she knows that need in that marketplace.
I mean, those type of businesses, it's really important that for entrepreneurs on the ground, they already know that this is a gap that they need to fill, and there will be again, on the other side of it are consumers for that specific product.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. I think that one thing that we can do as female angel investors is to find those opportunities of helping out women entrepreneurs overseas. So do you know any matchmaking organizations that actually help that? I know that you said that Suzanne went on one of these trips to Africa to advise and look at and talk to entrepreneurs. Anything else that you know?
Not at the top of my head right now. That's probably one of the gaps that we have right now as well. If you and I are really interested in connecting with women entrepreneurs from emerging markets, I haven't really seen something that would say like, hey, yeah, I'm going to join this platform because I know that they have that supply from the other side of women entrepreneurs who I really want to support on. There are certain funds right now for funds or social impact funds, as I mentioned before. But in terms of that connection platform, right now, no, I don't have anything at the top of my head. But that's probably a gap that someone needs to fill, or maybe we can fill.
Yeah, I know that there is an organization in Colorado, Think Global Institute, that does do, let's say, business training to women overseas. I don't know their numbers of how many they do it, and I know that's an application process and all that. So they're kind of solving that entrepreneurials, like how do you become a better entrepreneur overseas, you know? And I know there's another one, but Sherry Blair Foundation is another one. I'm looking that up right now so that I'm not saying it wrong. Yeah, Sherry Blair Foundation. It's, let's see, they do mentoring for women in business. So if you have a business overseas, you can get a mentor from all over the country, all over the nation, to all over the globe to help them. So I'm trying to say the about page here. About, and yeah, their quote it, Sherry Blair, she wants to give women the chance to become financially independent and make the most of their talents, is a key to higher living standards and stronger economies. So we've been talking about that all the time. Their vision is a world where women have equal opportunities and the capability, confidence, and capital necessary to establish and grow businesses, resulting in a brighter future for the women themselves and their communities as a whole. So that's one thing also we've talked about in some of the Google Hangouts, is that when we invest in a woman, albeit in the United States or an emerging economy, their communities are better.
Right, right.
So I love that.
I think another channel of that too is, I've gone to some pitch competitions wherein their focus is actually bringing on overseas women-led startups. So Ventures is one that I sat on as a judge for their pitch competition, and there were pitches coming in from Pakistan, which was the on-demand example, the on-demand doctor example that I spoke about earlier. That's one way of going about it. But again, you have to be really proactive in knowing when these events happen and where to actually get more information about it.
Yeah, I love that. And of course, it's Kiva is one of the organizations that have been around for a long time. It's not women to women, but you can help with micro loans. And that's I just wanted to mention that, as I know people are probably thinking, what about Kiva? But it is a micro loan instead of, let's say, an angel investment with equity. So just kind of putting that out there so that we're not not representing what we do know. So anything else that you wanted to kind of cover today? We have about like 8 more minutes.
I would say it's the, I think we've touched upon a couple of the things of the investor landscape when you're in an emerging market. Right now, there are definitely more expats or foreign educated investors and or investors who are local to the country but come from traditional businesses. And as I've written on the book, and based on the feedback from the entrepreneurs and investors that I interviewed, these set of investors are also, a majority of them are males. And I think looking back into, all right, how do we ensure that that investor landscape, you get that right mix of both genders on the side, so that you won't see the same concern that we have here in the Valley, wherein there's really not a lot of women in the investment space or women entrepreneurs getting investments, because there's more male investors investing in male entrepreneurs. That's also something that we need to be mindful about, of say, hey, yeah, there are tons of men who are investing in emerging economies, so why not the women as well? Because there are so many women entrepreneurs in emerging markets, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have to, as women, know that we need to invest in other women, invest in them because they have good ideas, and they have good business sense and good businesses to invest in. And it's just harder whenever we're doing it overseas. So we've talked about the connection pieces. So for both the angel investors that want to invest in overseas, it's more like, well, what is that connection back to something that you're passionate about, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then you know, one of the last parts of your chapter, it says similar patterns are in developing and emerging economies. And if we have a gender divide here in the United States, we can just imagine that there is definitely a gender divide overseas.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, you were saying that Noha Mahmoud of Juicy Labs Tech Accelerator has worked with around 50 investors in Egypt.
Yeah, Noha has been quite active as an investor as well, and I believe they also have an accelerator program. And you know, what she mentioned to me was, hey, a lot of these investors in the Middle Eastern region where she's from are, and you know, that's something that we need to see a shift on if we don't want to see that the gender divide in the investment landscape as well as the entrepreneurship landscape, really.
Yeah, I know that there is a wonderful angel investing platform for the MENA region in the Arab countries, and I've been following them for a while because they're just two fantastic ladies. It's called Womena, and just, you know, talking about that area of Egypt and all those areas right there. But they have events and they have women coming together and investing in other female entrepreneurs. So, you know, in any emerging economy, you need to find those things. If you're overseas, find them. If you're an expat, see how you can connect with them, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, no, I think we've kind of harped on that. It's really important that we as women investors are really proactive in investing in what we're passionate about. So finding those women entrepreneurs who we really want to invest on is one of them. Yeah,
I know. That's just so great. I wanted to do the kudos out to Womena's founders, is Elisa Freja and Chantal Dumonce. I just completely butchered their names, but they're doing great work over there and connecting great people. So just you know, as Wingpact and Hera Fund is doing it, we just, you know, want to lift up those ladies that are doing great work around the world. So we have about 3 more minutes. Anything else that you wanted to kind of touch on? I know one of them is get your book. Impact with Wings is on Amazon. And if you do come to the Hair Venture Summit in San Diego on September 17th, you can buy the books there and get them signed by Suzanne. So she's one of our panelists. So we're just so blessed and honored to have this great connection between Silicon Valley and San Diego, and just love promoting your guys' book. This is the first ever female angel book out there. So every single female angel and female entrepreneur should be reading this because it's great nuggets in here. Again, I haven't finished it. I can't wait. I need to set my time up and finish it up and read it, but every single word I've read has just been so rich in information and also inspiration, because your story is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for this opportunity, Sylvia. And if they want to learn more, as well as know which type of events we're going to or what we're doing next, they can go to wingpact.com or follow us on our Twitter at Wingpact.
Yeah, and also it's we had 2 or 3 viewers throughout the whole time, so we're really excited that you were viewing us, and spread the word that this is going to be on YouTube, and also, as Christine said, on their blog on Wingpact blog, Suzanne writes this all up. So if you missed something, if you didn't write it down fast enough, go onto their website and onto their blog, and you can see it there. And if you've missed anything, you really want to hear us again, it will be on YouTube in a little bit. So thank you again, Christine. I really appreciate you coming in and talking to us, and we'll see you next month. And if anybody would like to come to the Hera Venture Summit, September 17th at the University of San Diego. It is going to be a packed day of wonderful things. We have Trish Costello coming down, of course, Suzanne. We have ladies coming out from New York City. We have people coming from the Midwest, many from Silicon Valley, from LA, from Arizona, from Florida, everybody. So coming together to talk about angel investing, building bridges between female founders and female funders. So thank you so much for listening to us today. Thank you again, Christine and WingPact, and we'll see you next month.
Had a great conversation for sure.
I know.
And you'll have a fantastic event.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.